Context. Look at these two diagrams. Compare the size of the blue circle on the left side to the one on the right side. The one on the right side appears visibly larger, isn't it? No, actually, they're of the same size. What has caused us to perceive it otherwise? The only difference between the diagrams is the objects that surround the blue circles we are comparing. We like to think that we are competent to judge things based on their merit. This experiment shows that we cannot fully trust the evaluation of our eyes. And there are abundance of other similar optical illusions to prove it. A line appears longer when vertical than when horizontal. The moon looks large on the horizon, but small overhead. In short, how a thing appears can be affected by its backdrop. The way we visually perceive an object is dependent on where it is embedded. But does our mind similarly influence when it processes other forms of information? We hate being in a long queue. How would you feel if there are 10 people ahead of you in a line? You might rather leave and come back another time. But what if there are also 50 people behind you on the line? Now things look a bit different. The fact of the waiting requirement remains the same, but the interpretation has changed. An employee is informed that she's getting an unexpected 1-month bonus. She has every reason to be overjoyed by the news. When she gets back to her desk, she discovers that many of her colleagues are getting a 2-month bonus instead. She quickly turns despondent, even though the unexpected earning is a positive change for her. Is she not being rational? The two examples illustrate how our minds are strongly affected by context, the environment or setting of the object or issue under focus. And when perception changes, so is our decision on how to respond. Typically, contexts are imposed through direct comparison. It is easier to decide preference among many than to evaluate the desirability of an item individually. How attractive is this person? It's hard to say, and it depends. Does the person on the right look more attractive? That's easier to answer. In one experiment, participants were asked to assume that they were a music major and look for a music dictionary in a used bookstore. They can spend between $10 and $50. 2 different books were shown to 2 separate groups, one for each, and they were asked how much are they willing to pay for it. Book A, which is in good condition, received an average asking price of $24, while Book B, which is slightly torn but thicker and have more word entries, were priced at $20. A third group were asked to do the same, but this time the members were shown both books side by side and were asked to evaluate them. This time around, the relative outcome is different. Book B received a higher price. When comparing, the attributes that differentiate among choices became visible, and we can judge based on them, it became clear to the participants that the number of word entries ought to be a more important consideration than the book's condition. Comparison provides context for value judgment. It is no wonder that we rely heavily on it, even in situations where reference to others is not explicitly required. In a study, volunteers were asked to predict how much they would enjoy eating potato chips. The first group of participants could see a chocolate bar next to the potato chips. For the other group, the nearby object is a can of sardines instead. They were not asked to consider or compare the enjoyment of eating potato chips with the consumption of nearby food items that just happened to be there. Yet, the participants' prediction was lower for the potato chips nearby the chocolate bar. The comparison was carried out at a subconscious level. The contextual elements can be internal in nature. A person's mental state affects how he interprets an event. For example, someone who is happy is more open to suggestions, whereas a sad person would be more cautious. And there are many ways to change a person's mental state. Or it can be social. How we perceive an issue is affected when we are told how other people like us view it. or it can be environmental. What other items that are presented to us for comparison, or how the options are structured. We would explore each of them and its variation with greater depth in the course. Decision makers do not make choices in a vacuum. They make them in an environment where many features, noticed and unnoticed, can influence their decisions. The reality is, humans do not always assess each opinion objectively. Facts change in meaning under different contexts. The factors that are often outside of our awareness. When we react to them automatically, there's a chance that we won't judge well and end up making wrong choices. But this particular insight into human behavior also opens up a vital opportunity. If context can affect the evaluation of an item or issue, and consequently alter the decisions on choices and course of action, a thoughtful design of context can be done deliberately to increase our chances of getting the preferred outcome. In short, we could influence people's behavior by tinkering with the contextual drivers. Throughout this course, we would learn what they are, understand the mechanism at work, and dive in on the tips and techniques to overcome or employ them for good effect.